generations to come.
Welcome to another edition of the TDN Writers Room podcast. My name is Bill Finley. I'm a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News and also the co-host of the Down the Stretch radio show on SiriusXM Radio.
Yeah, Bill and I both do this, obviously, from the comfort of our homes. I'm Randy Moss with NBC Sports, and looks like it's just me and you this week again, Bill.
Zoe Cadman went to England, and she's a little jet lagged to see her parents, so we gave her the day off, which we'll always miss Zoe, and we'll welcome her back next week. So, Randy, we thought the Breeders' Cup was over, and it is, but now a controversy lives on that has, I wouldn't say it overshadowed the Breeders' Cup, but it's really became the topic of discussion following the end of the Breeders' Cup. And what I'm talking about is White Abarrio being scratched before the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And by no means am I saying he should have been scratched. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a veterinarian. But my problem with this is twofold. Number one, I have had problems with this industry for years about a lack of transparency. Mm-hmm. And this is the latest example. This is handled horribly. I mean, all of a sudden, the horse is off the track, taken back to his barn. Nobody's told why. The owners aren't told why. The trainer isn't told why. I don't believe you guys on NBC were told, because I know, being the professionals you are, you would have told the public what was going on. The other thing, too, that I wonder about is if the horse was so lame, why did it take them all week? These horses are supposed to be analyzed and inspected, 24 hours around the clock. How does something just pop up 2 minutes before the race? Did they miss something earlier? Apparently they may have. And that's something that concerns me a little bit, too.
Yeah, it's a little like our conversations over the last couple of years about HISA, right? I mean, it in totality, HISA, in my opinion at least, has done a lot of good for the sport. But there were going to be some growing pains. There are going to be situations that could be improved upon, and that HISA could look at, and they have, and tweak things to make things better. I think you can say the same thing about veterinary transparency, especially at major events like the Breeders' Cup. I think looking at it as a whole, it's been a very good thing. And yes, we've gotten a lot of scratches, and a lot of trainers have complained about the scratches, and sometimes they're head scratching, like the White Abarrio thing. You wonder why it took the horse being on the racetrack warming up before they saw it, when they supposedly had eyes on the horse every morning when he went to the racetrack all week long. I mean, those are some things that need to be looked at and need to be studied. But, I'm not going to name names. At the Breeders' Cup, over the last 3 or 4 years, there have been horses scratched from the barns of extremely successful major horse trainers, both domestically and internationally, who at the time expressed concern, confused, bewilderment that their horses were scratched, didn't understand why they were scratched. And on multiple occasions, those same horses wound up undergoing surgery, being off for extended periods of time. And so the system worked as it was supposed to work. I mean, there was also a major situation in a major horse race in the United States several years ago, involving a increased veterinary scrutiny on a horse. And the veterinarians told the trainer of said horse that before they would allow the horse to be entered in the race, the horse needed to go in for a PET scan. The trainer refused. The trainer screamed at the veterinarians. The trainer threatened legal action against the veterinarians, and ultimately relented to the PET scan, yelling and screaming all the way. The PET scan revealed a fracture that probably would have been life-threatening had the horse been allowed to run. And the horse was ultimately retired. So, yeah, there are situations that are head scratchers, but we've seen how important the so-called social license for thoroughbred racing is. We know, we've talked about it multiple times on this podcast. The tightrope that thoroughbred racing walks, living in fear constantly of a major breakdown on national television in a race like the Kentucky Derby or the Breeders' Cup Classic. We know how important that is. And, these veterinary checks, I think, in all, are a very good thing.
Yeah, Randy, I agree with you 100%. And what I wrote in my TDN column with the lead was the Breeders' Cup has two goals: to have great, exciting racing. They've accomplished that this year, and to have safe racing. But again, you look at this list, and it's not just White Abarrio. I mean, look at the names of the horses that were scratched for one reason or another.
And the trainers.
Sites, Blackout Time, Scottish Lassie, Mystic Dan, Tamara, Sweet Azteca, and I'm probably missing a few. So, I think it's right for people to scratch their heads and say, wow, were that many horses really unsound? And that gets back to the transparency. What would be the problem of somebody at the CHRB or somebody with the AAEP just, holding a little press briefing or something, or talking more about what happened, why so many horses. I don't know this for a fact, but this seems to me to have been the most top name horses that were ever scratched at the Breeders' Cup. I mean, it changed the complexion of several major races, particularly the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint with Tamara and Sweet Azteca coming out. But, I think they can I think they're doing obviously a good job keeping these races safe, but I think there's more to be done.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you about the transparency aspect of it. There are so many parts of thoroughbred racing, and we've talked about this in the past, and that where there is a greater need for transparency, and this is one of them.
Yeah, definitely. By the way, I want to remind you that as the holidays are coming up, we want you to send in your year-end questions to our team, to Randy, myself, Zoe, to all three of us, and ask us your questions, and we'll do our best to give you wise advice and wise answers. So if you have a question for our team, send it to Sue Finley, that's Finley for Finley, at thetdn.com. If you have a question about White Abarrio, the controversy about him, let us know. We'll try to answer it more. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland, and on your screen is a page of photos of just a few of the people at the Keeneland November sale. And even though Zoe Cadman is not with us today on the podcast, we got a peek of her on the photo page. We are taping this segment on Tuesday, the day the sale ends. It's a historic run in Lexington. And just to give you an idea of how well it's going, the end of book 3 on Saturday, the sales company had already surpassed the total gross of the entire 2024 sale, with 3 days still left to go. Average, median, and gross are up across the board, and they will conclude the sale with record totals. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland.
We do this so your granddaughter can work on a farm someday. So the stands will still be packed in 50 years. That's why we come to work every day. Obsess over every single detail. Because the story of racing is written one moment at a time. And the future of our industry deserves nothing less. Keeneland. Every moment matters.
The fastest horse of the week brought to you by the Fast Sires at WinStar Farm, a list that now officially includes Grade 1 winner Mullican, retired and joining the WinStar Stallion roster for 2026. Last summer, Mullican went on a 4-race tear in Kentucky and New York with wins that included the Grade 2 John Nehru Stakes, where his 7 furlongs in 120.54 was the fastest at that distance of any 2024 graded stakes, followed by a win in the Grade 1 Forgo Stakes with a 105 Beyer speed figure. Then he was third in the Breeders' Cup Sprint with the Treble Trip, and Mullican followed up this year with the career-high 106 Beyer. WinStar is inviting breeders to dream big with Mullican. The Son of Violence stands his initial season for $10,000. It was a big weekend for big Beyer speed figure performances. The fastest horse of the week for the second time this year is the remarkable Louisiana-bred 6-year-old gelding Touch Upon a Star, who rolled to a 10-length win against Open Company in the Delta Downs Mile for a Beyer of 108. Remember back in March, Touch Upon a Star won the New Orleans Classic over Sierra Leone with a 109 buyer. Touch upon a star owned by former NFL quarterback Jake Delhomme, trained by his brother Jeff. He's now won 18 out of 25 starts, $1.58 million. And of course, he'll be pointed for stakes at the upcoming Fairgrounds meeting. A little earlier Saturday, Disco Time won Aqueduct's Dwyer Stakes with a 107 buyer. A little more about Disco Time coming up shortly.
Welcome now, the Gainesway Guest of the Week. It's none other than Damon Thayer. He's the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative Senior Advisor. You know him from his long work in the Kentucky Senate, where he's horse racing's best friend. And of course, also the work he's doing, which we're going to talk about today, to try to deal with the problems down in Florida. Welcome, Damon. Thanks for joining us. And basically, I thought it was a good idea to have you on because this issue has not gone away, but it's kind of quiet right now with the Florida legislature not in session. So bring us up to speed as much as you can. We know there's been a lawsuit filed by the Stronach Group, et cetera. But if we had talked to you, say, 5 months ago, bring us up to speed of what's happened over the last 5 months.
Okay, thanks, guys, for having me on. We appreciate the opportunity to come on and tell our story. As you know, we successfully killed the decoupling bill for the 2025 session. And by we, I mean the Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, which is a coalition of owners, trainers, breeders, sales companies from Florida that banded together sort of in an emergency situation back in February when the decoupling bill sort of came from nowhere to get dropped on us. My board is David O'Farrell, president, John Green, vice president, and then members Aaron Wellman, dual Hall of Fame trainer, Mark Cassie, and Dr. Barry Eiseman. So we worked very hard putting together a coalition to kill the bill. But there's another legislative session coming up in January. And while there hasn't been anything pre-filed yet, our sources in Tallahassee tell us that Gulfstream Park is active in Florida's capital, trying to see if there is any support for decoupling. We think if we hadn't banded together and formed our coalition and fought the decoupling bill, it probably would have passed. But we got in there and scrapped and fought and clawed and testified in front of multiple legislative committees to tell the story of the $3.3 billion economic impact and the 33,000 jobs the horse industry has on the Sunshine State. We also told the story of how Florida is not, the horse industry is not just important to Florida, but really to the entire infrastructure and ecosystem of horse racing and breeding in North America. You all know that back in September, we sold $500 million worth of yearlings just down the road from me here at Keeneland. And then we just concluded another successful sale at Fasig-Tipton in Keeneland. 80% of those yearlings who were sold in Kentucky are now in Florida getting their pre-training and early lessons and preparations before they head off to their trainers throughout the entire continent. So that's why we've seen support come from all over the place. And we've been gearing up to fight the decoupling bill again. Last year, we were sort of caught on the back foot. This year, we're going on offense. And we know one of the reasons why we were on the back foot is because the prior year, Gulfstream Park was in Tallahassee handing out over $300,000 worth of campaign contributions. And I'm not being pejorative. I'm just telling you the facts. These are public information, and that's widely available. And we're doing the same thing. We didn't have a chance to be political last time because contributions can't be made once the legislature starts. But we had a fundraiser last month in Ocala for Senator Jason Broder, who effectively derailed the bill in his committee back in the spring, early spring in Tallahassee. And we're involved in supporting other legislators who we know are supportive of our cause. So we're getting more political. It's hard sometimes for the horse industry to get involved in politics. I learned, nearly a quarter of a century in the Kentucky legislature, horse people don't really like to get involved, but I've encouraged my board and the folks who support us that we've got to support legislators who support us, and that we've got to be political. That's one of the reasons Gulfstream Park is so strong in Tallahassee, is because they've been political. So I think the story right now on this day, on this Veterans Day 2025, is that we are on offense. We are prepared, better prepared to tell our story. Our coalition is engaged, and while we can't match Gulfstream Park dollar for dollar on the political side, we are going to be involved in the political side of things before the opportunity to make contributions shuts down when the legislature goes into session in January.
All right. Let me pan back a little bit, okay, to back up to 35,000 feet. All right. And look at this from a future vantage point. Okay. Let's assume that you continue to be successful in beating back the decoupling efforts. Having talked to a lot of longtime veteran horsemen in Florida, they almost all seem to concede that the land is worth so much that Gulfstream sits on that it doesn't make financial sense to continue operating it as a racetrack. So what's the end game? If you avoid decoupling and Belinda Stronach, let's say, ultimately decides, okay, I'm just going to sell the racetrack for developmental purposes. What about racing in Florida? I mean, what happens then? What do you do? What's the end game?
Great question. First of all, I want to note that there are 3 willing buyers for Gulfstream Park. One of them is public. Of course, Mike Rapoli has offered to buy Gulfstream Park and keep it as a racetrack in its current coupled state with the slot machine casino there on the first floor. And then there are at least 2 other buyers who haven't gone public, and I'm not really in a position to reveal that. But there are at least 2 other groups interested in buying Gulfstream Park with its current business model. But to answer your question, and then do a little bit of a look back on how we got here. To answer your question, Thoroughbred Racing Initiative, and one of our partners, the Florida HPPA. Sorry, sometimes it's hard for me to get out of the Kentucky mode. The Florida HPPA and Tri are co-funding a feasibility study with the Cornerstone Group, which did the Maryland racing feasibility study. And we're looking at a half a dozen different options for the future of racing in Florida. Now, as a lifelong fan, someone who participates in racing partnerships, used to work at racetracks, used to work at the Breeders' Cup, I was a member of the Breeders' Cup notes team at all 3 Gulfstream Park Breeders' Cups. I think it's incredibly important to preserve racing in South Florida. You know, my big concern here in the United States is we continue to kill racetracks in major metropolitan areas. Most recently, of course, the Stronach Group did that in San Francisco at Golden Gate, and they did it at Portland Meadows in Portland, Oregon. I grew up in Michigan, so racing is gone in Detroit. And there are Boston. We've lost racing in Boston. We're going to lose racing in Washington, D.C. when Laurel closes and the Maryland circuit settles in at Pimlico. And there are a lot of worries about Santa Anita. We want to try to protect racing in L.A. So, you know, I'm a big believer that if we're going to continue to make future fans to do things like wager on platforms, ADW platforms, and simulcasting and watch racing on TV, we've got to have racing in our big market. So I'm a big fan of making sure from a fan and from a financial point of view that we figure out some way forward in South Florida, either at Gulfstream Park, at Hialeah, or perhaps somewhere else north of the Miami-Dade Broward area where perhaps a new racetrack could be built where land is less expensive. I'm not ready to give up yet on racing at Gulfstream Park. I don't know how long-term viability is for racing 200 days a year there. But I do think there's a way forward in keeping racing in South Florida in general and at Gulfstream Park in particular. And, maybe I can come back on your show when we have the results from this feasibility study, because it's nearly done. I can't really get into some of the details, but I can tell you that there are probably 5 or 6 possibilities: South Florida, Tampa, Ocala, all the above included in that mix. So we form for 2 purposes: to kill the decoupling bill and to figure out a way forward for racing in Florida. So let me do a quick timeline, jump back. 20 years ago, the Florida legislature passed the bill that couples the slots parlor at Gulfstream Park with live racing. Then it was approved by a local referendum in Broward County, and then the Horsemen signed an agreement with Gulfstream Park. Now, at that time, it was owned by Frank Stronach and not his daughter Belinda, but that was the agreement. And Gulfstream Park agreed at that time in its contract with Horsemen that it would not do what it is doing today, and that is trying to decouple horse racing from its gaming operation. And that gaming operation is only there because of the legislature, the Broward County voters, and an agreement with horse racing interests, the Florida HPPA in this case, to couple the two. I also would like to point out that under that law, Gulfstream Park can have up to 2,000 slot machines at Gulfstream Park, but they have only operated 500 of those now for 20 years. Can you imagine if a proper full-blown slots facility with 2,000 machines had been in operation for the last 20 years, how much money that would have brought into the general fund in Tallahassee, as well as the purse fund at Gulfstream Park? So, when I tell you that there are 3 willing buyers for Gulfstream Park, they know that they could put in 2,000 machines, knock down that retail facility in front of Gulfstream Park, and put a proper casino in there that you could see from the road, and try to go head to head with Hard Rock, which is 8 miles away. Lots of possibilities, guys. Lots of possibilities.
Are there current discussions, to the best of your knowledge, between these 3 potential buyers and First Racing going on right now?
I am not privy to those conversations late this year, but I do know that during the first half of this year, those conversations were taking place. And obviously, Mike Rapoli went very public with his desire to buy Gulfstream Park. And I can't speak for Mike, but something tells me he's probably talked to Belinda Stronach about it. I don't know if any conversations have taken place recently.
Damon, one of the big victories from the pro-horseman side last year occurred when, and Rapoli had a lot to do with this as well, Governor DeSantis came out and said he was not in favor of this bill. His language didn't absolutely 100% say that he would veto it, but he left it pretty clear that that was his intention. I don't see why that would change. And if he's standing in the way, what chance do they have to get the bill past DeSantis? And if they can't get it past him, it's not going to happen.
That's exactly right. And one of the big victories that we achieved was getting Ron DeSantis to come to the auctioneer's podium at Ocala Breeder Sales Company. And OBS is one of our biggest supporters and an important part of our coalition. He came there and in front of a large crowd of owners and breeders and trainers and consigners and industry participants, all but said, pass this bill and I'll veto it. And the Republican supermajorities there probably didn't want to choose a fight with their very popular governor. And that was a really big win. You are absolutely correct that Mike Rapoli played a major role in that. But so did Try. One of our board members, Dr. Barry Eiseman, worked behind the scenes on that as well. But so did Mike. And I would never try to minimize Mike's role in this. And then if you were there on Kentucky Derby Day, who was in the winner's circle when Mindframe won? Governor Ron DeSantis as a personal guest of Mike Propoli. And that's really emblematic of the kind of relationships that are so important for our industry. And I've given a couple speeches this year, and I'm working in some other states to try to help horse racing there. These relationships that we can have in our states with members of the legislature, with governors, are critically important. And not many people know this, but in 2024 and going back into 2023, I believe the largest donor to the Ron DeSantis for Governor campaign was Mike Propoli. And, those things matter. And, I keep telling people, I spoke at the HPPA convention. I spoke to the Arkansas breeders. I'm going to be on a panel in Arizona at the University of Arizona program next month. People have to have relationships with their legislators and their governors and their agriculture commissioners and their attorneys general. All these things are really important. Everybody in every racing state except Nebraska has one representative and one senator. In Nebraska, they have a unicameral legislature that's just made up of senators. So you only have one representative in Lincoln. But in the 49 other states, there's either a House of Representatives or a House of Delegates and a Senate. And people need to reach out to their legislators and let them know about how important their businesses are, not only to the entire state, but the districts that these people represent.
I would like to make one quick comment and segue. The TDN did reach out to the Stronet group and asked them if they wanted equal time with Damon, and they declined. So we did try to get them on, and that's understandable. With the lawsuit going on, I'm sure they were advised by their attorneys to keep quiet on this. But just so you don't think we're purposely beating up on anybody, we did give them the opportunity to speak. Randy?
Yeah, just one more question for me. You mentioned the feasibility study that'll be forthcoming with maybe a half dozen different options for the future of racing in Florida. And you mentioned, Ocala, Hialeah, some other options. How much of a challenge is it that the Seminole tribes right now, other than, let's say, what's going on at Gulfstream Park with the casino there, pretty much have a stranglehold on gaming, non-parimutuel gaming in the state of Florida?
It's a huge challenge, Randy. You're absolutely right. For example, sports betting is legal in Florida, but only on one provider, the Hard Rock Sports app. Hard Rock is owned by the Seminoles. The tribe pretty much has a stranglehold on all other casino gaming except for what is authorized at Gulfstream Park, which is slots, and at Tampa, which is a card room. And, these other options are going to require partnerships to come up with purse supplements. And we're going to need help from Tallahassee in order to make that happen. It's interesting that the Seminole tribe is rolling out a similar product to what we have here in Kentucky called historical horse racing, except they're making that product available on an auto racing platform. But boy, that sure does open things up for other options. We can't just, for example, open up a racetrack in Ocala. And there are several places in Ocala where we could have a viable racing meet logistically. There are training centers, there's OBS, but where's the purse money going to come from? I don't think the Seminoles are going to let us have a slots parlor in Ocala. And I think there's a company whose brand ambassador is a mouse not far away in Orlando who probably is not going to like having any form of expanded casino gambling that close to their family-oriented attraction over there at Disney World. And also Universal is a pretty big player there too. So these are part of the challenges. It's a jigsaw puzzle that we're going to have to put together. And we told legislators earlier this year, look, kill this bill. We will come back with solutions to the future of Florida racing. And this feasibility study is part of it, but we're going to need purse supplements, some form of expanded gambling, or some help from the general fund, which happens in other states, happens in Maryland, happens in Texas, in order to be able to run a meet that doesn't either have a card room like they have in Tampa or slots like they have in Gulfstream, we're going to need some form of help there and a partnership to make it work.
Damon, this is something I want to comment on. It's coming more from me. I don't even know if it's a question, but you feel free to weigh in on this. One thing that I've never quite understand about what First Racing's plans are, I don't think a casino at Gulfstream Park is going to be successful. You mentioned the Hard Rock Cafe. It's one of the most successful casinos in the world, just up the road. There are more casinos in Broward and Dade County than there are Starbucks. And, maybe that's the reason they never did put in the 2,000 machines. I've gone in that casino at Gulfstream. There's nobody in there. They can build the biggest, fanciest casino in the world. I can't see them again with the Seminole Tribe. I can't see them competing with the Hard Rock.
I think that's a valid point. And I think, maybe that's why they only have 500 machines. But, you've been to Gulfstream Park. You've walked through that retail establishment in front of it. I mean, I'm not a casino operator. I'm a horse racing guy. But if I owned the place, I would level that and build all the bells and whistles slots casino with big flashy signs like you see in Vegas. I mean, nobody who's out on Federal Highway can tell that there's even a casino there at Gulfstream Park. At least shout it from the rafters and make an effort. And you're right. I mean, the Seminoles are very good at running a casino. Hard Rock is incredibly successful, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. I mean, that slots parlor is buried on the first floor of Gulfstream Park. Why not use the land that you've got there to your advantage? And I've talked to some casino operators who say that that's not a half bad idea to, you make it so you can see it at least from the roads that intersect there at Gulfstream Park. That's a lot of traffic, a lot of population, a lot of people. And I do know this, the current slots operation generates about $6 million a year for purses. That's a not insignificant number. Why not give it a try and tell the horsemen you can generate more money for purses, and tell Tallahassee that you're going to generate more money for the general fund? Because let me tell you one thing. Legislators, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, they love to have money not generated by income taxes or property taxes or other forms of taxes that people pay during their daily lives. They love to have money generated by things like gambling so they can spend it on other stuff. Trust me on that. Doesn't matter the party.
Very good. Well, Damon, thanks so much for enlightening us on the situation, and we're going to stay on top of it, of course. Good luck for horse racing, obviously. If you like the game, you certainly want Gulfstream Park to survive in its current structure. But thanks so much for being our Gainesway Guest of the Week, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Always great to be on. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to tell the story and update your fans.
Okay, thanks, Damon.
Take care. Damon Thayer, our Guest of the Week, brought to you by Gainesway, home of the stallion Muth, whose first in-foal mares were well received at Keeneland November last week. For example, the mare Howl, as in Howl at the Moon, winner of the Safely Kept Stakes, sold in foal to Muth for $525,000. And Muth also had an in-foal mare, Precious Dixie, who sold for $450,000 in Book 1. Just like his sire, Muth won Grade 1 stakes at both 2 and 3. In fact, he's the only son of Good Magic to do that. The Grade 1s were the American Pharoah and the Arkansas Derby. Muth was a $2 million sales topper at OBS. He made $1.5 million on the track. And now Muth stands for a fee of $30,000 at Gainesway. Power, passion, performance.
Say hello to Muth. It's a one-horse race, very professional and very fast. Muth rolling home by 4 in fine style.
Muth, the son of Good Magic, coming down the stretch in Hot Springs to win it.
We have another controversy in horse racing.
Imagine that.
Johnson was given the award as the new owner of the year by OwnerView. And surprisingly to me, several people, including Mike Rapoli, reacted and said this guy didn't deserve it. Here's something from a blogger by the name of Tom Stetton. Said, latest new owner of the year stunt from the Jockey Club's marketing machine, and I'm being kind, does more than just smell off. It's flat out insulting to the people who actually keep the sport alive, the real owners and the real bettors. To me, the people that are criticizing this stuff are living in the past. This is not this. I don't, this makes me so upset. I don't even know where to begin. This young man did more for horse racing than I think any owner has done, maybe outside Mike Rapoli in the last 10 years. This is not 1997. He went on social media. He is a good looking young man. He reached out to people. He said in his reply to Rapoli, that says, I made Sandman the most important horse in the world. And you know what? If you go by clicks on his, I guess he's on Instagram and Twitter and whatnot, he probably can back that up. Not only that, he invested $60,000 of his own money and travel expenses to get to these races, to go. He went the extra mile for thoroughbred racing. And now he's invested his own money in 4 new horses that, of course, he's going to keep blogging about and keep talking about as an influencer. This is where society is right now. This is what is important. This is how you promote the game. He was not only not deserving, he was a no-brainer, very deserving candidate for the new owner of the year. And I compliment the owner view for thinking outside the box a little bit and not just naming XYZ stables because they're new owners and they want a grade 3 race somewhere. Randy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I couldn't agree more. I don't care if Griffin Johnson was gifted ownership in Sandman. I don't care if he subsequently spent his own money to be involved with some horses, which reportedly he has. Makes no difference to me. The ultimate bottom line here is the attention that he focused on the sport of thoroughbred racing that wouldn't have been there if it weren't for his prowess in social media. I mean, at the Kentucky Derby, we were scratching our heads. Where did all this money bet on Sandman come from? I mean, his odds are way lower than they figured to be on paper, than they should have been. And then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. It was like, it's Griffin Johnson. He has made Sandman the most well-known horse running in the Kentucky Derby. Look, it's where the world is right now, 100%. They were just on the Today Show. I was watching, we're taping this on Tuesday. I was watching Monday's Today Show. And they had a whole big feature on the social media department of the Los Angeles Chargers. They went behind the scenes. There were like 8 of them, full-time social media, that have generated millions and millions of views, mostly young people who have become huge Chargers fans as a result. Other NFL teams do it, maybe not with the success of the Los Angeles Chargers. Some racetracks are decent at social media and trying to engage some people in social media, but not nearly to the extent that they should be. And the success that Griffin Johnson has had in focusing eyeballs on the sport is a perfect example of why that's so important. They should give him a freaking Eclipse Award in addition to the new owner of the year.
Yeah. And Randy, again, it's nice to see that we're totally on the same page with this. And one other point is, there are some racetracks that do a pretty good job on social media. There's some that don't, but I think their audience is you and me. The key to this is that Griffin Johnson reached out to 20-somethings who are traditionally have not paid much attention to racing, have gone off into sports betting and whatnot, and he got them to pay attention. So this is one of the silliest damn arguments that we've had in horse racing this year. And Griffin Johnson, the whole industry owes you thanks for everything that you have done.
And I think Mike Rapoli backtracked a little bit.
Did he?
Jason Worth had a long, impassioned defense of Griffin Johnson that he posted on Twitter, I believe. And Mike Rapoli responded to that affirmatively and said that he agreed with everything that Jason Worth had said. So that's good to know.
Yeah, thank you, Jason Worth. And good to know that Mike is willing to backtrack if he comes out to the conclusion that maybe he misspoke or wasn't quite right. Hey, so there was an exciting horse at Aqueduct on Sunday because the horse sold for $5 million at the 2024 Keeneland sales. It's a horse by the name of Courting by Curlin out of Cavorting, makes that horse a full sister to Clairiere. You remember her, a real good horse from a few years back. She is owned by Whisper Hill Farm, Stone Street Stables, and Wind Dancer Farm, trained by Todd Pletcher. She debuted on September 24th, ran okay in a 1 mile race at Aqueduct, fourth beaten 2 1/4 lengths. She comes back in her second start again on Sunday. She wins by 2.5 at 1-9. I don't know what her buyer number is. I'm sure Randy can tell this. I don't want to throw cold water on people's enthusiasm, but I was not very impressed by this horse. First of all, it was a 4-horse field and she was 1-9. I mean, she was put in a position where she can't lose. She's extremely well bred. Maybe she's going to improve and we'll see the best of her next year. But for now, I think Courting is a good horse, but I'm not going to get down on her on the Kentucky Oaks winter book anytime soon. Really.
It would have been more exciting if Courting had, rolled up a 98 buyer speed figure or something instead of the 75 that she got coming off a 77 buyer in her debut. But I'm not gonna, completely dismiss her at this point for a couple of reasons. First of all, in that 4-horse field, the pace of that race was extremely slow compared to a 2-year-old New York bred maiden race a little bit later on the card. It went almost 2 full seconds faster for a 1/2 mile and 3/4 of a mile. Now, that probably helped Courting because she was on the front end, but it tends to suppress the final time and therefore suppress the buyer speed figures. So I can give her a little bit of extra credit for that. And also, being by Curlin out of Cavorting, being a full sister to Clairiere, the shortest distance Clairiere ever ran was 1 mile and 1/16. This Courting figures to get better and better at distances other than a 1-turn mile. And so, the jury's still out on Courting, but she's definitely going to have to show a lot of improvement. And actually, the most exciting horse to run at Aqueduct over the weekend was Disco Time, who won the ungraded Dwyer Stakes, a 1-turn mile on Saturday. As I mentioned, with the buyer of 107, trainer Brad Cox said that Disco Time was owned by Juddmonte, based in Saudi Arabia. The ownership will be appointed for the Saudi Cup now. And it looks like we got a long way to go. The Saudi Cup's obviously in mid-February. But if all goes well, Bill, we could be looking at Forever Young, who won it last year, Romantic Warrior, who's now back in training and scheduled to run a couple times in Hong Kong before hopefully heading back to Saudi Arabia to be rematched again against Forever Young, Disco Time, and maybe Nisos, because Bob Baffert has pointed out that a 1-turn mile and 1/8 would be perfect for Nisos. A lot has to happen between now and then, but it's exciting to look forward to.
Certainly, it looks like it's going to be, as usual, a very good race. All right, we'll be right back after these messages.
And the TDN Riders Room is sponsored by our friends at the Pennsylvania Horse Breeders Association, the PHBA. You don't often hear us talking on the podcast about 4-mile races. Well, on Sunday, November the 2nd, the 90th running of the Pennsylvania Hunt Cup took place over 18 fences through the rolling Chester County countryside. The Timber Steeplechase race is intended to be a substantial test for horse and rider, and it was. The winner, 9-year-old Master Seville, the only Pennsylvania bred in the field. Congratulations to his owner, breeder South Branch Equine, and to the horse, because now, according to his trainer, Mark Beecher, Master Seville will get a little time off and then go fox hunting over the winter. To learn more about these versatile Pennsylvania breds, go to pabred.com or call Brian Sanfratello at 610-444-1050.
The Pennsylvania breeding program is the best program in the country. The Stallion Awards, the owner bonuses, also the restricted races and the stakes races for Pennsylvania breds. This year, 8 breeders are on track to earn over $200,000 in breeders awards, and 2 could hit the $1 million mark. We have the best program in the country. Take advantage of the fantastic program that we have.
Learn more at pabred.com.
With some of the fullest fields in the country and quality racing year-round, There's never been a better time to reap the rewards of breeding and racing in Kentucky. Purse money in Kentucky is at an all-time high, as is average purse per race, outpacing California, Florida, and New York. Kentucky breds. Breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
The TDN Riders Room brought to you by Kentucky Breds. The wins by Kentucky Breds at this year's Breeders' Cup featured Ted Naffey in the $2 million Breeders' Cup Juvenile and Super Corridora in the $2 million Juvenile Fillies. That was on Future Stars Friday. Then Saturday, Scylla in the $2 million Distaff on Championship Saturday day. This year's wins give Kentucky Breds 262 Breeders' Cup triumphs through the history of the championship event, more than any other state or country. Also, Forever Young, winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic, is out of the Kentucky bred mare Forever Darling. By congrats. He's a cousin, actually, to Sierra Leone. Forever Darling was a graded winner during her racing career. She won the 2016 Santa Ynez at Santa Anita. Kentucky breds, breed them, raise them, race them. We all win.
Well, we're starting to find out which of the 2025 stars are coming back and which ones are going off to the breeding shed. Hasn't been many surprises. I was a little surprised that journalism is coming back, and I think that's good news for the sport. He was a horse that was so game, and so he just had that misfortune of being born in the same year as Sovereignty. He is going to race next year, but that brings up Sovereignty. What's going on here? It's been a while since the Breeders' Cup is over. They have not made any announcements either way about whether or not he's going to run next year or if he's going to be retired and stand at stud. I'm sure something will come shortly. My guess is that because he's owned by Godolphin and Sheikh Mohammed would dearly like to win the Dubai World Cup with the horse he owns, that's where he'll be pointed to. I have no inside information on that. It's just a guess, but I sure hope Sovereignty comes back. That would really make things a lot more exciting for thoroughbred racing in 2026. Maybe this time he can run in the Breeders' Cup Classic and won't get sick beforehand.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. If you think back to when Mott and Godolphin obviously made the decision to skip the Preakness with Sovereignty, part of the rationale that they used was that they wanted Sovereignty to be at his best at the end of the year for the Breeders' Cup Classic and then the next March for the Dubai World Cup, since he's owned by Sheikh Mohammed, obviously. So since he missed the Breeders' Cup Classic due to his fever, I wonder if that's going to affect the decision of Godolphin one way or the other. We haven't heard yet, but it would be wonderful if we can get Sovereignty and journalism back in training in 2026.
So usually the Clips Awards discussions are somewhat of a bore. There's, no point debating who's going to be the 2-year-old male dirt champion. We all know that's going to be Ned Toffee, et cetera. But I asked our team, is there any ones that you're still up in the air? I mean, the jockey race between Flavian Pratt and Irad Ortiz is fascinating. And in Money One, they're almost a dead heat. So you're really going to have to do a deep dive into their statistics. I actually think Pratt winning the 7 races at Aqueduct the other day, setting that record, might be something that the voters should consider, because that was quite in the whole history of the New York Racing Association, most winners for anybody on a card. But I came up with, I don't know what to do. Well, I do, because I've made up my mind. I've got one out of the box selection, and it's in the older male division. Dirt division. I will not vote for Forever Young because he doesn't abide by the Finley rule, which I will not vote for a horse that ran only one time in the U.S. I will not vote for Sierra Leone because he was 1 for 5 on the year. One grade 1 win was in the Whitney, a big race, but still 1 for 5. I agree. I will not vote for Fierceness because he was only 2 for 5 on the year and only won 1 grade 1 race, which is the Pacific Classic. So where am I going with this? How about Mind Frame? 3 for 5 on the year, and one of the losses really shouldn't count. That's when he got nailed in the Jockey Club Gold Cup and had all that go wrong. I realize he didn't run particularly well in the Breeders' Cup, but his year was better than these other horses that generally have gotten more, acclaim than he has. 2 grade 1 wins, 1 grade 2. And like I said, if not for the accident in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, might have won 3 grade 1 races. So I'm probably not going to be on the winner there. Oh, and one other thing, we talk about the Breeders' Cup Classic being the race of the year. It probably was. But if you ask me, the second best race run all year was the Churchill Downs Stakes. And look at the horses he beat in there. Banishing, Nisos, and Bookham Dano. That was one hell of a field in there, and he won it. So, Randy, am I crazy?
It was a little.
Okay.
I understand your logic. I understand your reasoning, right? I get it. Churchill Downs Handicap was a fantastic race, and Mindframe beat Sierra Leone at Churchill Downs as well. So, and I agree with you about Forever Young. I agree with you about Sierra Leone. To me, you can't just look at like number of graded wins, number of grade 1 wins at the end of the year. I think how the horses stacked up against each other can often be and should often be the ultimate tiebreaker. And Mindframe got drilled in the Breeders' Cup Classic by both Sierra Leone and Fierceness. So to me, my way of thinking, that disqualifies Mindframe from the Eclipse Award. It's not like he went into the Breeders' Cup Classic as a solid favorite for older male. Then you might have been able to, okay, maybe, but I'd go for Fierceness. That would be my vote, I think, for older male. But, I wouldn't stand on a soapbox and yell and scream that Fierceness should be the champion. Yeah. Right, so the other division, I want to get your thoughts about this first. 2-year-old fillies.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you vote for champion 2-year-old filly?
Super Corridor.
Okay. 2 starts, a maiden win, and a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies win over a speed favoring racetrack with an uncontested early lead.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What about Cy-Fair?
Well, okay, so here's the problem with Cy-Fair, and this may not be fair. And again, there are no rules for the Breeders' Cup. I think there should be some rule. For the Eclipse Awards. I think there should be some rules, but I don't see this division as a division for grass horses. I think you're really thinking outside. And Cy-Fair, I love. I won a Breeders' Cup race, won 2 stakes, including the Algonquin at Woodbine. And Super Corridor only won the 1 stake. But I just don't see this way. And it's just me. And it's not written down anywhere that it has to be a dirt horse. But traditionally, this division, as well as the 2-year-old male, has always gone to a dirt horse. I don't believe there's ever been a turf horse that has won in either of these divisions. So is that right or is that wrong? You seem to think that people should be a little bit more open-minded to it. Cy-Fair had a great year, and I understand your logic.
Yeah. Look, in the older division, you've got the older dirt male, you've got turf male, you've got older dirt female, you've got turf female. But in the sprinter division and in the 2-year-old divisions, you don't have an alternate Eclipse Award for grass or turf. And I think that at least opens it up to a little bit of wiggle room in unusual situations. And this might be an unusual situation this year because Super Corridora, she's undefeated. She's 2 for 2. But like Randy, I said, what's that?
She's not 2 for 2. Remember, she lost those 2 in that maiden race beforehand. She might have been.
I think she lost a couple of times sprinting. Yeah. But in 2-turn races, she's 2 for 2.
Right. Okay.
Cy-Fair beats the boys. She runs against the boys in the Algonquin Stakes at Woodbine and just trounces them in one of the most visually impressive races that a 2-year-old filly, probably the most visually impressive, a 2-year-old filly ran all year. And then she comes back in the Breeders' Cup against the boys again, and again demolishes a field very impressively, including, some of the best 2-year-old sprinters that Coolmore brought over from England. So I'm willing in this circumstance to give extra credit to Cy-Fair in the Eclipse Awards, given that Super Corridora is the only Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner in history to go from just a maiden win straight into the Breeders' Cup to win that race.
Super Corridor owned by West Point. Terry Finley just got on the phone, said he's no longer sponsoring the show. The Work of the Week is brought to you by First TV. Tenacious leader, second in the Grade 3 Bryan Station Stakes at Keeneland in his last start to troubleshooting, is headed south for the winter to prepare for his 4-year-old campaign. Here he is on the outside working in company with stablemate Iris Gent. Tenacious leader broke his maiden at Saratoga and won allowance at Keeneland before his runner-up finish in the Bryan Station.
Be a smarter better with First TV. The best horses. With thousands of exclusive morning workouts. All at your fingertips and delivered right into your inbox. Everything you need to be informed. Be smart. Bet smart. With First TV. All the thrills. Fraction of the bills. Experience the power of the partnership. Change your life, make new friends, and compete at the highest level of thoroughbred racing. West Point Thoroughbreds, the gold standard in racing partnerships. Visit westpointtb.com.
The TDN Riders Room brought to you by West Point Thoroughbreds. You know, or we think you know, about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies triumph with Super Corridora. Meanwhile, the West Point 2-year-olds have continued to roll at Churchill Downs in a maiden race. Paige Turner, Paige, Paige Turner poured it on for a 5 1/4 length victory for trainer Cherie DeVoe. That was her second lifetime start. And then Into the Beast followed suit at Churchill for trainer Dale Romans. For more information on becoming a West Point partner, check out www.westpointtb.com.
All right. Well, we miss Zoe Cadman. She'll be back next week. But thank you for tuning us in. And that's a wrap on this week's TDN Writers Room podcast. I want to thank our Gainesway guest of the week, Damon Thayer. I want to thank my partner, Randy Moss, and also the people that work so hard behind the scenes to put this show together. Sue Finley, Katie Petruniak, Anthony LaRocca, and Alita LaRocca. And remember, send in those questions as we really can put in a good show. And once again, if you have any questions for our year-end podcast, send them to Sue Finley at thetdn.com. For instance, what was Randy Moss smoking when he came up with Cy-Fair as the 2-year-old filly champion? That would be a great question.
And why does Bill Finley not wear his Bookham Dano shirt on the podcast ever?
Well, that's I got a new one coming, by the way.
Good.
When, yeah, I got official one coming from the owners of Bookham Dano.
Are you voting for Bookham Dano for champion sprinter or Ben Tornado?
Bookham Dano. Oh, come on. What kind of question is that?
Okay. All right.
All right. Anyways, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.